Welcome to True Scary Story, where the chilling meets the bizarre and the paranormal gets an unexpected twist of humor. Sit back, grab your popcorn, and let me take you on a roller coaster of fear, laughter, and a whole lot of what the heck is happening kind of moments. Today's tale takes us to a small town in Texas called Markham, where Geneva and her mother Linda experienced a series of eerie and perplexing occurrences that would unsettle even the bravest of souls. Markham, Texas isn't exactly the kind of town that makes it onto most maps. It's a blink and you'll miss it kind of place, where the most exciting thing that usually happens is the annual pie-eating contest at the church fair. But if you keep your eyes peeled as you drive past the Welcome to Markham sign, you might just spot the house where our story unfolds. Geneva was just a kid when her mom, Linda, got remarried and moved into a new house on the outskirts of town. The house had charm, potential, and was conveniently located near a church, which seemed like a bonus at the time. Little did they know, the place came with more than they bargained for. The adventure began when Geneva moved in with her mom, leaving behind her grandma's cozy home. Everything was new and exciting, and they eagerly set about decorating their new abode. The house seemed perfectly normal at first. It had a slightly creepy bathroom that Geneva instinctively didn't like, but she figured it was just her imagination. After all, who wouldn't feel uneasy with dim lighting and glass sliding doors that belonged in a horror movie? The trouble started with the bathroom. Geneva felt cold gusts of air while using the shower, like a phantom was opening the sliding door just to mess with her. The third time it happened, there was a handprint on the glass. Not a dainty, friendly handprint, but a full-grown man's handprint etched in the mist. Geneva's decision was immediate. Shampoo in her hair or not, she was out of there faster than a cat on a hot tin roof. Now, Geneva's mom, Linda, was married to a truck driver who was rarely home, which meant they couldn't just blame him for the strange happenings. One night, Geneva and her sister, who was a toddler at the time, decided to sleep in their mom's room. They were snug in bed when Linda suddenly shook Geneva awake, her voice barely a whisper. "Geneva, wake up." Groggy and confused, Geneva blinked at her mother. "What's wrong?" she asked. Linda motioned toward the bedroom door, her eyes wide with fear. Outside in the kitchen dining area, the light flicked on, and a shadow moved past the crack under the door. It wasn't just any shadow, but one with a deliberate, almost leisurely pace, like it had all the time in the world to haunt them. They watched in horror as the shadow came back, this time stopping right in front of the door. Silence stretched taut, punctuated only by the hammering of their hearts. And just like that, the light went off. They didn't sleep much that night unless you count lying awake in sheer terror as some form of rest. The shadow seemed to walk the halls as if it owned the place, a non-paying tenant with a penchant for creeping people out. As time passed, friends who stayed over reported hearing footsteps and feeling the oppressive sensation of being watched. Some guests couldn't even make it through the night. One by one, they left, swearing they'd rather camp in a haunted forest than spend another minute in that house. Geneva, her siblings, and Linda shared a room, but Geneva always felt like there was someone, or something, lurking outside her window. One night, as she was immersed in a video game, she heard it. Whistling. A haunting, melodic whistle, followed by a giggle. The kind of giggle that only a man who's up to no good would make. "Mom!" she shouted, racing to the living room. But Linda was already there, peering through the window with an intensity that could have cut glass. "Shh, be quiet," she warned, extending a hand to her daughter. "Do you hear it?" Geneva nodded, her heart pounding. Together they listened, leaning into the window as if by proximity they could uncover the mystery. Outside, the disembodied voices continued, punctuated by that eerie giggle. It was a sound that lodged itself in their bones and refused to leave. Desperate for help, Linda called her brother, a man whose sheer size and bravado could intimidate a bear. "Can you check around the house?" she asked, her voice tinged with urgency. "On my way," he replied, as if this was all in a day's work for him. He arrived, flashlight in hand, and methodically combed the perimeter of the house. Despite his bravado, Even he couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. Yet the giggles persisted, taunting and elusive. He reassured them with a promise. "If you need me, just call." The whispers and giggles became a regular occurrence, as familiar as the sound of crickets on a summer night. Yet no matter how often her uncle came, the source remained elusive, slipping away like shadows at dawn. Eventually, though, the situation escalated. One night he caught sight of something he couldn't quite describe. He was patrolling the yard, as he had done so many times before, when he heard footsteps above him. On the roof. Now, roofs aren't exactly prime real estate for trespassers, but there it was, a series of quick, purposeful footsteps. He shone his flashlight upward, demanding, "Who's up there?" Silence. A deafening, chilling silence. And then, a rustle. The sound of something or someone scampering across the shingles and disappearing into the branches of a nearby tree. A flash of a black figure, gone in the blink of an eye. That encounter was enough to send a chill down even the sturdiest of spines. Whatever it was quick and it was gone. Linda's brother shared his encounter with her, but she held back the details from Geneva until much later. The image of a mysterious creature lurking in the shadows was enough to leave them both uneasy. Life inside the house was no less unnerving. One day, while washing dishes, Linda glanced up and caught sight of something reflected in the window above the sink. 3 dark shadows, indistinct but undeniably present, hovered there like malevolent specters. She turned quickly, heart in her throat, but found nothing there. Yet the sense of being watched persisted. The pantry, in particular, seemed to harbor a presence of its own. Every time Linda passed by, she felt an inexplicable chill, like fingers trailing down her spine. She took to leaving the light on, hoping to ward off whatever lingered there. But the pantry wasn't done with her. In the dead of night, shadows seemed to creep across the walls, and the rustling of bags, chips, cereal, who knew what else, could be heard. It was as if the pantry had a mind of its own, and it was hungry. Geneva, ever the curious child, had her own encounters. One afternoon, as she stood in the kitchen, she felt a sudden jolt, a thump from beneath the floorboards directly under her feet. The sensation was so startling that it sent her jumping back, her heart pounding like a jackhammer. "What the heck?" she muttered, wide-eyed and bewildered. The house, as it turned out, was built on bricks and concrete slabs, a veritable fortress against the creeping unknown. Yet, something, or someone, was tapping from below, demanding attention in the most unsettling way. Linda, fed up with the constant disturbances, decided to take matters into her own hands. Armed with a flashlight, she ventured outside, determined to uncover the truth. It was dark, and the air was thick with tension as she crouched down, peering under the house. What she saw there defied explanation. A creature, if one could call it that, with the appearance of a wizened old man. Its eyes were unnaturally large, its hands resting on a mound of dirt. The creature's hair was sparse, its teeth aged and yellowed, and those eyes, those impossibly large eyes, seemed to bore into her soul. Linda's reaction was instantaneous. She screamed, a sound that shattered the stillness of the night. In her panic, she scrambled backward, tearing 3 toenails clean off in her frantic escape. She burst back into the house, breathless and in shock, unable to speak for days. The terror she felt was palpable, an unshakable fear that clung to her like a shadow. Geneva watched her mother's transformation with growing concern. The woman who had once been a pillar of strength now seemed fragile, her nights filled with restless tossing and turning. The house, it seemed, was intent on driving them out. The Bible readings and blessings from Linda's devout mother only seemed to exacerbate the situation, as if the house was mocking their attempts to cleanse it. "I'm done," Linda finally declared, her voice firm with resolve. "We're getting out of here." And so they did. The family packed their belongings and left the house, the memories of their ordeal still fresh in their minds. But even as they settled into a new home, the sense of unease lingered. Geneva, who had always been brave in the face of adversity, found herself changed by the experience. She clung to her nightly prayers like a lifeline, seeking solace in the belief that the worst was behind them. Yet the house in Markham remained, a silent sentinel standing watch over its secrets. As they drove past it on their way out of town, they couldn't help but glance back, a shiver running down their spines. "I wonder if anyone else has experienced what we did," Geneva mused aloud, her curiosity piqued. Linda shook her head. "I don't want to know," she replied, a note of finality in her voice. That chapter is closed. But the shadows, it seemed, were not quite done with them. Geneva's sister, who had been a toddler during the ordeal, grew up with an uncanny ability to sense things, dark shapes and figures that seemed to follow her wherever she went. "She sees them," Linda confided in hushed tones. "The shadows, always lurking, just out of reach." Even now, as an adult living in her own home, Geneva's sister continued to encounter the shadows. They hovered over her, dark and foreboding, like sentinels of an otherworldly realm. "She said it had a goat's head," Linda whispered, shuddering at the thought. The presence, whatever it was, seemed determined to follow Geneva's sister, as if drawn to her like a moth to a flame. The shadows were relentless, flitting in and out of her life with an unnerving persistence. Linda, desperate to protect her family, installed cameras around her father's house, where they had moved after leaving Markham. The cameras captured images that defied explanation. A creature, reminiscent of the one she had seen under the house, peering into the camera with an unsettling intensity. The footage was unsettling, a stark reminder of the house's lingering influence. Geneva's sister, who lived in their old room, bore witness to the strange occurrences, the shadows always hovering at the periphery of her vision. Linda's father's house was no sanctuary. The house was old, with attics that seemed to harbor secrets of their own. Geneva's uncle, who had once lived upstairs, spoke of a lady in white, a ghostly figure who watched him with a detached curiosity. "She'd just stand there," he recalled, "watching me play pool, her eyes following me like a hawk." The family's collective experiences painted a picture of a world teetering on the edge of the supernatural, where shadows walked and creatures lurked in the dark. And so, the tale of Geneva and Linda's haunted house became legend, a story passed down through generations. It was a cautionary tale of things that go bump in the night, and the resilience of a family who dared to stand against the unknown. As for the house in Markham, it still stands, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. A relic of a time when the supernatural collided with the mundane, and the shadows danced under the Texas moon. And that, dear listeners, is the story of Geneva and Linda's encounter with the unknown. Whether you believe in ghosts, shadows, or simply the power of a good story, one thing is certain. The world is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And sometimes, just sometimes, they're hiding right under our noses, or in this case, beneath our floors. Sleep tight, and remember to keep the lights on. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows, just waiting to say hello.